Hello and welcome for this very first session of series Mania Rendez-Vous with the creators and producers of No Man's Land. I would like to welcome the co-creators of the show, Maria Feldman and Eitan Mansuri. Hello. The producer and co-founder of Haut Television and producer of the show, Caroline Benjo. Christian Vesper, you are President of Global Drama of Fremantle. You're co-producing No Man's Land and you're also in charge of international distribution. And Alexandre Piel, you're Deputy Head of Drama at ARTE Fiction France, and you're also in charge of the acquisition and the co-productions. No Man's Land is an 8-part series for ARTE and Hulu that was created by Maria Feldman for Masha Productions, Eitan Mansuri and Jonathan Dowek for Spiro Films, Caroline Benjo, Simon Attal and Carol Scotta for Haut Television, and co-produced by ARTE France and Versus Production. In association with Hulu, Fremantle, as I said, is co-producing and in charge of international sales. The drama follows Antoine, a young Parisian, in search of his estranged sister, supposed to be dead in war-torn Syria. The show has been launched in France and in Germany on ARTE platform in October. It will be launched on the regular broadcasting device in France and Germany from November 26 and starts in the US on Hulu on November 18. Before starting the conversation, let's have a look at the trailer.
Je veux plus jamais te revoir, Antoine.
Il est là, papa?
Qu'est-ce qui se passe?
Faut que je vous parle d'Anna.
Elle est morte dans un attentat terroriste au Caire. T'as toutes les preuves là, tous les témoignages. Tu le sais que c'était elle?
Ils ont pu se tromper. C'est bizarre cette ressemblance.
Ah, t'as vu ce que t'avais envie de voir, c'est tout.
Si elle était pas morte en fait.
Allô?
C'est moi, c'est Antoine.
Je suis en Syrie.
Antoine, je t'en supplie, faut que tu sortes de là tout de suite.
Je suis venu chercher ma sœur.
T'as fait une belle connerie en venant ici. C'est vraiment pas le bon jour pour rejoindre Daesh.
J'ai rien à voir avec Daesh, moi je vous jure.
We always knew this was a one-way ticket.
What? We just want to sacrifice, brother.
Son's the fucking piano that I can set on fire to prove my faith.
Allahu Akbar!
I have no mercy and I have no fear.
Tire-moi dessus si tu veux. Je peux vous aider.
Imaginons que ce soit vraiment elle. Ensuite, il se passe quoi?
So, Maria and Eitan, you are at the very beginning of No Man's Land. So, what was firstly your inspiration and the background of the whole series?
Okay, so first of all, it started with me and Eitan. We've been friends for a long time, and we never really co-produced anything together. And it actually started with a conversation saying, let's do something together. We should do something together. And Eitan wanted to do something about the war. And I said, let's do something about the biggest war that affects everybody right now. It's a war in Syria. And that's how it started.
I've read very interesting things while you were actually you tried to be as precise as possible, and sometimes when you try to be too precise, you might have some issues and some problems along the way. When you're Googling ISIS or where you're Googling how could I join ISIS, you might get into some kind of troubles.
That's true. The amount of times I Googled like beheading and crossing to Syria and FBI didn't show up, I'm very surprised, you know.
They should you had an FBI truck outside your house.
That's true, but that's a different story. Now maybe they finally...
But generally we started, when we back then started talking about it, it was, I think Maria came with the idea of the sister and the brother, and I was obsessed with crossing borders, and I came with the idea of the friends joining ISIS, and this was combined into this two stories that became one. And I think research-wise, it started a lot from Itai Engel, and from Itai Engel is an Israeli journalist who traveled in Syria several times during the civil war there, and did few TV shows on that, and he was also lecturing, and I think we met him and saw everything he did, and that was a major part of the beginning.
One of the challenge of the show is that you're covering a lot of grounds. It's an intimate drama, it's a geopolitical, in a way, introduction to what's happening right now in a very specific place in the world. It's also a thriller. It's when you're covering that much ground, it might be rather complicated to find a proper way to find a unique story to tell.
Well, I don't think the idea was to cover a lot of ground. I think we had a great story to tell. That's how it started. And the story was just the way the story goes. It expands on numerous territories and it involves countries, but it's a clear story. So we go with the story, not vice versa.
I felt that there was a lot of layers and it was very rich. That's one of the great I would say viewing point and even selling point of the show. Though I was wondering, for creators and writers, having so much territory to cover might not have been that easy always.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy, but first of all, I think one of the things, we have 4 co-creators on the show, and I think everybody brought also their angle they wanted to deal with. Like, I was more interested in the female Kurdish fight and the story of the brother and the sister and the family drama. And Eitan was obsessed with this, the ISIS recruits, how they can get into Syria. And Amit and Ron brought all the espionage and Amit's experience as the journalist. And so I think that's why it's also so rich, but it's all also meet together and, joins together.
At the end of the day, it all corresponds with the story. There's nothing in there that is not related to the story. So everything we brought to the table was, we were all really enthusiastic about really different things in the story, but each one of us brought something. And I think Amit and Ron took all of it, but always kept it with the story. And that's why it's not like this, we're going to tell you what's going on in Syria, but this is a story that is happening in Syria, and by going through the story, you learn a lot about what's going on there.
Did you add some kind of divide, or did you actually say, I'm covering this part of the story, and you worked afterwards all together? Or the writing process was also always very communal, if I may say?
No, Amit and Ron are the writers of the show. So they were writing and we were talking, let's say. So it started with me and Eitan bringing the initial pitch and the initial storylines and characters. And then Amit and Ron would develop it into scripts. And then we would read it and discuss it. We had some things like, the last push, we all came together to Israel and we're in the same room also together with Oded Raskin, the director, and we did the last round of rewrites. And it was intense. We were 4 people in one room for 2 weeks, and each had they would start talking about the British friends and ISIS, and I would say, okay, I'm leaving. I'm going to have coffee. Don't discuss Syria without me. So it's everybody had the specific thing or specific character that I have to be there when we're discussing it.
So when you had I would say the first version of the show, is it when Caroline came on board, or how the connection with Caroline happened? Did you have already something really an advanced stage, or was it more like a kind of general Bible that was giving some kind of idea and arches where the story could go? So how Caroline intervened, and how did you decide to work together?
Well, actually, we really wanted to work with Maria when we saw the shows she produced. At that time, it was False Flag and Fauda, and we were in Tel Aviv, had a meeting with her and say, well, we want to work with you. What kind of story could we develop? And she pitched No Man's Land. And it was just amazing because it was a few pages, 3-4 pages, but you pitched it in few words. It was enough for us to say, oh my God, we really want to go. It was this brother from a French family having lost his sister and suddenly seeing her in a CNN documentary about Kurdish fighters. So we started there. We didn't have much, and we started from scratch. We had many layers of development, actually, because at first, Karine Thuil, who is a French novelist, stepped in to write we'll say 20 pages treatment from the pages that Eitan and Maria had written. We were selected to the Series Mania pitch. We ended up winning the pitch, and this is when Christian Vesper came into the story because he heard us and wanted to see how we could be part of the project. So I would say that from that moment on, we started working all together, and Amit and Ron only came in at that moment. So we really started to work from scratch. And once we had, thanks to the partnership of Fremantle, enough material to chew on, we went to see ARTE in France, and we went to see few potential partners in the US, and among them Hulu. We did the usual shopping around, Maria, Amit, Christian, and I in Los Angeles, and this is how it all came together.
So when you pitched the show at Series Mania, did you have the precise idea when you entered the project that one way or another you needed a co-production? And what kind of producer were you looking after? Because I remember I was in the room when you pitched the show, and the big challenge is to be giving the general idea of what the show will be, but leaving some free space and free creative space for someone who will come along and won't feel like it's not a common work. It's just everything has already been done, and there is just some space for the other to breathe in a way. So how did you actually enter the competition, and what happened when you won the prize? Because we have to remember that it was the first time the pitching session was on at Series Mania Forum, and you won the prize. So what the entering in this competition and winning this prize changed for the future of the film?
Well, I mean, I guess Maria and Eitan can answer as well, but he gave an awareness of the show on the international market that he didn't have before. And since we wanted it to be an international show, but very much rooted with the start, which was France, and after going in the Middle East, and I will say from the moment it goes in the Middle East, we have also a UK part, but it becomes a real international show. And of course, some broadcaster came to us, but it was important for us to have a partner. And that's why it was wonderful to be able to speak as soon as possible at that time with Christian and have him respond so strongly, to speak with someone that will have an international vision of how we could actually build up a financial strategy around the show. That was the only way to respect the artistic freedom we wanted to have and coherency of the show as well. Right? I mean, Christian, Maria, I guess this is what we can say.
It is a special show, and I think we all, when I was able to become involved in it, the feeling was not to make too many compromises, to find the money to put it together, but also do it in a way that I think was almost independent. It was, that we wanted it to be, there were many steps to getting the show on the air. It was very complicated, but I think we all worked well together, and I think we maximized the international opportunities that were out there. That's what the journey was about, was maximizing that rather than taking the easy way.
We didn't have anything written when Fremantle came in. We only had 20 pages that we actually pitched at Series Mania. And Fremantle helped us develop not only the outline of the episodes, but also a few episodes were written before we came to see broadcasters.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was, traditionally distribution companies get involved after the development and the commission. We have taken the approach on certain projects, this being one of the earliest, that we would come in to help support development and as well, and get involved as early as possible. And again, that is down largely to our faith in and the producers. I've worked with Haut before in the past when I was at Sundance Channel, and they're one of my very favorite producers in the whole world, and have absolute faith in anything they do. And then when I met Eitan and Maria, it doubled that sensibility. So I think that it was about seeing how this could work.
Your connection with Haut is a long running one.
Yes, it is. Yes, and worked on the last Panthers with them as well. Again, a big fan of working with them to get their vision out to the international world, the US in particular, but everywhere else as well.
But trust is very important in that kind of project. And so afterwards, when Fremantle was on board, this is when ARTE arrived. It is the right timetable. Caroline?
Well, actually, I think we saw each other for the first time, Alexandre, if I'm not mistaken, in Lille, right?
Yeah, that's right. We were there during the pitch, and then we had a meeting all together with you, Caroline, and Maria and Eitan. I think that was the first time we met, and we had a discussion after the pitch, and we've been totally seduced, I would say, overwhelmed by the human dimension already there, of this kind of destiny of the characters. Everything was there in terms of parameters. And then we met afterwards in September.
We didn't know yet if we had some US partner and what US partner we had, but I think more or less the same in the same trimester we went to the US with Christian and pitched the project over there, and so maybe it's more you, Christian, who can answer to what happened there and what happened after. But I mean, it was quite smooth. It was quite amazing because very soon, within few months, we knew how the project was going to be structured. And that the idea of bringing together some partners that never worked together was really exciting for us.
Of course, ARTE has worked with Haut before because in prehistorical time now, in 2011, the very first TV shows you've made, Xanadu, was with ARTE. And you worked, of course, along the way and you keep track of each other. But in the meantime, ARTE worked and was the first broadcaster to do so with platform, with Netflix. So ARTE was maybe an open-minded partner that probably was different from the current French landscape. And it's probably why, I wouldn't say that Hulu came on board, but at least everyone was open for a new attempt in co-production.
I mean, I think that, as Caroline said, it all happened sort of at the same time. I mean, when the show was ready to take out, in general, we took it out. When we went to Los Angeles, the response was really strong. I mean, it was a fun trip. I mean, the combination of Maria and Amit in the room and the story that Eitan and Maria and the writers had developed was so, as Alexandre said, it was so strong and emotionally connects so immediately that, I've been to a million pitches in LA, and this one, people were immediately engaged and emotionally invested. And in addition to Hulu, there were two other networks that were very involved, and that took a few weeks to sort through that. And what was great about the Hulu ARTE, I do think that sort of what we all did together was unique, and it came together in a unique way, and it took a lot of trust on all the parts of all the producers and the networks. And I think, again, everything's changed so much now that Hulu's officially part of Disney and Fox, and they're so much bigger. But the executives there, I think, wanted to. They hadn't worked with ARTE before, and they were very open to doing it. That it all made perfect sense. It was an alignment of taste and business interests, I think.
But also for you, Alexandre, jumping with ARTE, with Hulu, while you're accustomed to work with traditional European broadcasters, it was a first for you. So it was going into unknown territory. So it was quite a gamble for ARTE to go and to work along with Ulu.
Yes, it was a first, but we had some previous experiences as well on the international co-production side. So we knew how to build trust and confidence with partners as a minor partner, and the role was a bit vice versa on this one. I think it was. Also, we benefited from a past experience that failed with the Weikur in a way. And so we knew how to drive something in a different way to make it work. And I would say that we know that we all needed a financial partners and another channel. So it was very open from the beginning that we had to partner with someone. And then I think the key was a very straightforward dialogue. So at each time we faced an issue or situation, the idea was not to be stubborn about our constraint, but really have an open-minded way and think creatively about solutions. So that was really, we were driven by that. And I think all of us really.
As the show became this global co-production with various partners, did his DNA change along the way? Did it have a very big influence in the way that it was at the end creatively done? Or do you feel that even if it has been a major co-production with various partners, you managed to keep along the way the same DNA?
I think the DNA only gets stronger along the way if the partners are clear enough about what they want to achieve, and if, as Alexandre put it, there is Christian trust and transparency. We were constantly talking about the problems where problems arise, and we were not afraid of facing them. And I have to say that in this triangle, writer, director, producers, we were all so incredibly close to each other. And, you know, there is something we never talk enough about in co-production is the amount of work that is put into the production. And here, I think we were all at the same level. We worked like crazy, and it was, you know, we put all our time into it. And the DNA of the project did get stronger along the way, definitely.
Were you all agreeing on the kind of what it was going to be a 6-parter, an 8-parter? Was it a common decision, or was it some decision that were you had to show, some partners had to show some flexibility along the way, or how did it work there? Or the way that the show was conceived at the very beginning, it at the end not that much difference on what are we going to see?
We wanted 8 part, I think, from the beginning, and all the networks were with it. So we didn't have any discussions of, because 8, like, I always feel, and I mean, that this is like the right length for a show like this.
But the story changed. I mean, what was, I think Maria made the point earlier, the story organically evolved enormously in this case. I mean, like Maria, the part of the story that immediately grabbed me were the Saria story and the female Kurdish resistance fighters. But that is, you know, it's interesting. Hulu did a lot of audience research, and that is one of the stories that grabs people. Other stories grabbed other people about Antoine. And I think that what was so interesting about working with this team was the openness to evolving the story in really big and layered ways. As Maria said earlier, just the sophistication and layers just built over time, but always in a way that made sense and just made the story better and richer.
During this conversation, Alexandre told me a very interesting thing. He said that while you're working on a fiction, you either work for a domestic show that might travel, and you're working for an international show that will have to travel. So I guess that the way that you write is changing, because there is some connection a domestic audience might understand, and luckily the international ones will capture, while when you have a true international show at the very beginning, do you have in a way to change the way that you're creating the characters and in a way changing the way that they're talking, or the way that the scenes are all put together?
Well, I think it's more the international show at some point has to land, and to land locally. And it means that each story has to be as authentic as possible from a drama point of view and from a cultural point of view. And I think this is the work we did together with Chabi Molia, was regarding France, really trying to be as close as possible to what France reality is about. Because basically what we were doing was a kind of hybrid thing to put, a French family through one character, through two characters within a reality that was so foreign. And at first we were joking because among the first exchange, of the first draft, the character of Félix Moati was sleeping a lot with young women. I mean, he was having a very, very active sexual life. And we tuned down a bit that. I mean, Félix was not happy about it, but we'd had to tune it down. But this is an anecdote. But just to say that, I guess Eitan and Maria, it was constantly authenticity and how strong the drama can be, because the drama always travels when it's strong.
I think we had in mind, how do we do excellent television and how do we tell the story in the best way we can? And then if it's good, it works. If it's not good, it doesn't travel.
Well, I think that it's a testament to Alexandre and Jordan Hellman, who is his counterpart at Hulu. On both sides, they defended the vision of the creative, I think, in a way that you have to have for this kind of show to work. Because, of course, at any organization, the further you get away from the creative, there's this abstract notion, this has to be this much French, this much English ideas. And it was really up to Alexandre and Jordan to sort of be the, and in this case they did. They defended the creative really well.
I think on our side, we also realized the commissioning editor on our side was Clémentine Bobin, and with Olivier, we worked, Olivier Votling, the head of drama, we worked really all together on following the script writing, and what Christian is mentioning is really true. I think that is really the first position of the broadcaster. And then we realized as well that even the French storyline was benefiting from the Kurdish side and from the British jihadist side. And each point of view was really enriching each other. So that was an essential part, a key part of that.
Let's come to the production of the show. Firstly, the aesthetics of the show. What were the decisions you made all together, and between what kind of choices you had, and why we do see and we do actually discover the show the way it is now?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with the choice of the director. Maria had a lot of experience with Oded, and I know of his work. We all knew his work, and I think we understood that what he can bring to the project is something that we want in the project. I think that's what you feel when you see it now. That has a lot to do with him, with the pace, with how you move with the character, with how you go in and out from a situation. And I think choosing him was, in a way, deciding in a very that was the first step and the most meaningful one on how the show would look and feel.
This kind of limited series or international series, there's always maybe 2 or 3 directors shooting the whole series. Generally, the first 2 ones, or the first 3 eps, or the first 2 eps are directed by someone who gives them the basic guidelines, and the others come along. This time, and it was a heavy production, we're going to talk about it, you had the same director along the way.
Yes, and we decided that it's very important. It maybe was unfair for Dad in the end of the day, because he, it's a lot of work and it was a very long production. But we thought it's important because every episode of the show travels. It travels between countries, it travels between flashbacks. And we thought it's very important that treat it as a feature film, like a long feature film, and that the same director would go with it till the end. I think it was a very important decision. And when we were searching for directors, a lot of directors really wanted to direct the show, but couldn't do all 8 episodes. And we decided not to go with them because we thought it's the right thing to do. So I think it also affected that you see this the same line, going through all the episodes.
Regarding the casting decisions, of course, when you've got an international co-production and you've got a big international partner in charge of sales, you want names in a way. You have to think about marketing. You need to have a... and actually, what's interesting in the show, you've got very good actors, but not, I would say, household names or big names that could put the budget in another stratosphere. So how did you manage this importance of being... talking to American audiences, being actually that the French or the German audiences would be understanding, and the fact that how did you work around this whole casting issue, especially when you have amazing unknown actresses in the part, especially of the Warriors, that are coming from, as a European viewer, I was not aware of them before. So it's also a gamble in a way.
Well, as far as the French actors were concerned, and for the others as well, I will say the same that we said before. We tried to get the best actors. And we were clear that we didn't have to have one that was going to steal the show, which often happens when you have someone very well known. So the only person that is more known, but more known to US audience and less to European audience, was James Purefoy. So I will say that it was quite smoothly done as well, because we were exchanging the casting sessions, and it was just a fact that we chose the best, and we didn't have to fight for that. And even with ARTE and Hulu, they totally agreed with us. So that was great.
Today, and I'm sure that Christian will agree, in the landscape of global drama that is so fiercely competitive, having names helps you and puts you on the map. And even for marketing reasons, it helps you just to have some knowledge of the show and sometimes pre-sale the show. So, and you didn't use that tool, if I may say.
It does. I think there was certainly discussion from the Fremantle side of, what sort of casting might be done. But again, the creative, if you don't let the creative imperatives guide, you're not going to have a good show that people want to watch. So at the end of the day, we very much wanted the producers to hire the cast that made the most sense for the characters. In the UK and the US, James has a profile, and that was, certainly helpful, I think. But really, what frankly is helping sell the show, and it's doing very well, is how good it is, and I think that one of the, and I think a lot had to do with hiring Oded as well. When we first started getting, clips that the producers had put together for our teams here, the action of it all, I think, was what surprised people, that it was both emotional and it moved and it had pace, and people that, I think may have, salespeople that may have been afraid of the politics were suddenly completely fixated on it as a really almost, you could sell it if they had to as a genre piece, which was better than, frankly, spending all our money on a big actor. It's just having a show that had many different ways of coming into it.
Talking about money, the show was done with roughly 1.5 million euro per ep, and you had 7 to 8 days for each episode. You shot with 15 different actors coming from 15 different backgrounds. You shot in France, you shot in Belgium, you shot in Morocco, and boy, when you discover there is a final result, there is such an amazing production value. So how did you manage it? Because when you balance the intensity of the shooting, all the gamble that was in the shooting, and the budget, you've done an amazing work.
That's a secret. We cannot talk about it.
No, but first of all, we had 8.5 days per episode, not 7 to 8, 8.5, which is a big difference when you talk about 8 episodes. Other than that.
Well, I mean, maybe there is some
work between the scripts and the production, and I think that's where us as producers come on board working together with Oded and the screenplay writers to adjust and move along the way all the time, keeping the heart of it beating the way we want to beat, but not losing any essentials, but keeping it tight and with all the important elements on board. I think that's a major part of work that we've been doing quite before the beginning of pre-production, through the pre-production, through the shooting days, into the editing, until the finishing line. That's like an everyday job of saying what's important for the drama, and do we need it or not, and how do we spend the dollars right.
So Eitan, you said you won't reveal the secret, and you said it all. That's not good at all. But what I want to add is that Oded Ruskin was our first choice, but it was not available. So we had to go and look for other people. And what we realized is there were not many Oded Ruskin in this world, because few of the directors we approached would love the materials. When we told them, well, this is the money you are going to have and this is how many days you are going to use, they say, you are just totally nuts without us. So I have to say that basically he did an astonishing work. We did help him for sure, but it was not an easy task. And, we did it once. I'm not sure we'll be able to do it again in the same conditions because it was tough. Very tough.
These guys were extraordinary in making the show to the level to which they made it in the context with the resources. And I know that Maria doesn't think it's funny, but they've set a very bad precedent for themselves. I think that now, because and you go down and you see the way they and Oded worked. It's I think, like Eitan said, it's so focused on what's important, and I don't think that they wasted any time. There was none of the fat that you see in productions, in other productions we've all worked on. Which is a very hard thing to attain. And that Oded was able to do that across 8 episodes is I think physically an extraordinary feat, really.
Just to give us an idea, how long did the pre-production last, and were you feeling that it was the enough amount of time? You would have needed more?
It was a good enough amount of time, I would say, and probably the French crew members would say that it was nothing. So we had this tension, between the Israeli way of working and the French way of working, which is very different. I worked before, let's say, with Americans, and although they have much more money, they move similarly, they move fast, they don't make money, they don't spend too much time. And French, they think very differently. I think also because of coming from feature films and having always more days and being very, very precise, which is great. But you can't do it when you do a TV show, when you have a date you need to be ready to air it, and you have a budget. So we had this tension that I think was very exhausting, maybe emotionally sometimes, but was very good for the project, between the French way of working and the Israeli-American way of working.
That was creatively actually a very strong dialectic between both ways of seeing the work, and how much attention do you put into details, how much time you spend on, art direction, things like that, where it was interesting. I think the French crew learned a lot, and I believe it was both ways too. And if the show is where it is, it's because of this friction, and this is why trust was very important on both sides, because in a situation like that, if you don't trust each other, you could kill each other, so we never came to that, far from that, and we were all really totally on the same track.
No, I was just saying, I think this would have been a very hard show to make this well at this budget if you'd had a big conventional studio sitting on top of it with its own its traditional ideas of process. I think that, to Caroline's point about trust, it was also everyone who had a stake in any decision just had to be available and make a decision and talk like that, without preconceived ideas of how things should be done. Because we were under, for various contractual reasons, with Hulu and ARTE, it was a very tight time frame to deliver episodes. And
it was a time frame before COVID. So
yeah,
it became a real challenge with COVID. And we didn't have to change much about our schedule because basically we had to deliver within the same time frame.
Let's delve into that, because launching a show internationally, you have to be going along the goals of each broadcasters. And each broadcaster's timetable might be different. ARTE might be different from Hulu. So it might have been something, I would say, another layer on the cake of complications, because for ARTE, the right time to launch a show might not be the same for Hulu, and the question of window and the time when the show becomes available for international sales. So how did you manage all that? And on top of that, you had to deal with COVID.
Well, Alexandre might speak about it quite well. It was not easy. And this is where it's important also to be able to constantly speak and be aware of the fact that we have to find solutions and be as flexible as possible. So, Alexandre, we ended up doing it, right? And we managed, but it was not an easy path.
No, we managed, but it's the least we can say. No, we did great, I think, all together. It's true that everyone has different constraints, but indeed, we all realized it was not a posture, a behavior of negotiation. It was really a true constraint for each other. So when Hulu was saying at the very top, we want to transmit first because we want to put the Emmy Awards, and that was before COVID, we knew it was really important for them. And then we just had to be creative and work it out, to think differently and to manage rights in a different way as well. So when Christian said we have to sell day and date as well, then we all had to adapt ourselves to that situation. So I think it was a different way to think and probably to manage rights and to manage broadcasters and partners positions. But it went, we managed. The least to say, we managed.
Yeah, absolutely. And once this was dealt with, which was most the technical aspect of those rights and day-to-dates and stuff like that, I have to say that all the marketing process was very smooth on both sides. Very interesting for us producers to see what different ways were taken. And I think we learned a lot, I mean, this is what's exciting in co-production, is when you learn things, that were totally terra incognita before and become, oh my God, this is so interesting to have a show that is sold so differently. I mean, it did very well in France. We are crossing our fingers for the US. I mean, the launch on both sides was spectacular. I mean, and there is a second launch in France since it's showing on the ARTE, the channel, starting November 26th. So it's going to be very interesting. And for us, the team could very smoothly work together and exchange information. And I have to say that, and I'm not saying that because Christian is here, but the Fremantle in the middle was helping a lot, because they are used to be working a lot in big co-production. So it was, I suspect you made things easier in terms of all, channeling the marketing process and having the communication go very well between both entities.
I was going to say that in the world of the past, the show was supposed to be in international competition at Series Mania, and then use the MIP TV as a launching pad. And of course, the pandemic came along, and all the marketing tools were in a way disappearing, and you had to, I wouldn't say start from scratch, but you might to rethink everything very, very quickly.
Well, Alexandre and his team and everyone was so flexible about meeting these deadlines that all went away once, in terms of broadcasting, that all went away and once the pandemic hit. And again, to Caroline's point, the producers, the post guys were terrific, and they actually managed to keep the schedule anyway, for the most part, which was incredibly helpful from a marketing point of view. But I think that, and again, I can't necessarily speak from the ARTE perspective, but I know for us in the US, it was a little bit of a blessing in disguise, in that it cleared a lot of space around the show, and enabled Hulu, the team at Hulu who loved the show, to really elevate their attention to it. And I think again, it all points to the necessity of being flexible and open-minded to whatever the situations present, and just keep pushing. Everyone just kept pushing forward. What's the next challenge? How do we deal with that?
Interestingly, the show was conceived with international independent producers, and in a way, at the time, most of them were independent broadcasters too. So what does it say about the fact that, what's interesting in the fact that it's important of being independent in drama production global landscape?
Well, we have so many things to say that we are all silent. Eitan, I'm sure you can start.
About a topic that we deal with on a daily basis. But I think, again, when you see this group of people, and I think the fact that each one of us has his own ideas and his own wills, and we are able to combine together and to keep those ideas and to be able to mobilize them and to build around them in a free way without huge influence from outside, is a big vote for independence. A lot of it is due to Fremantle's support and to ARTE's support and to Hulu's support, but of course I think it has to do with the fact that
and we were working with people who knew that this triangle, again, producer, writer, director, is essential to holding on and make the creative process as idiosyncratic and as strong as possible. And I think without this dynamic, this show wouldn't be what it is. And our independence made us stronger in front of them as well, but they were very happy we were independent, because when we were fighting for something, it was always for the right reasons. We didn't have higher obligation to fight what we were fighting for. It was the conviction that the choices we were making was for the show and only for the show.
Of course, everyone is hoping that there will be a second season. But interestingly, the landscape of the production might change, because when Hulu came along, it was an independent platform, and now it might be turned into Disney Star and become a global player. So it might rewrite a little bit the rules of co-production for the show. Or is a second season going to, in a way, survive this evolution?
I think that, I mean, look, in this particular case, Hulu is so happy with the way things have worked out, and in the American system, the best thing to do, and I think that what we've done on this show is we stayed. If you're not spending $8 million an hour, the big bosses in LA aren't even going to notice, to be perfectly honest. And so I think that for us, it's like we're this grouping, this sort of production makes sense the way it is. I think that there is a recognition on the part of the executives at these platforms that, I think a production like this proves the value of this sort of independence and model. So I don't necessarily think that this model would be at risk, at least in this case.
I've got a last question for every one of you. What was the most remarkable learning curve of this project for each of you?
There are so many, I think that's why everybody is not answering, not because we didn't learn anything, just because we learned too much. I think, first of all, I discovered a new country that for me was Morocco, which was amazing. I think it's always when you discover a new place, there is this feeling of like Yes, learning something, you learn a new culture, and we spend a lot of time in Morocco, and we really traveled a lot because we had, we shot in Morocco 4 different countries. We shot Syria, Turkey, Egypt, and Iran. So we couldn't stay, as a lot of production do in Morocco, they stay in one area, like around Casablanca, around Marrakesh. We really, and trying to be true for the authenticity, we had to really travel. So for me, I think the biggest learning thing of this was discovering Morocco and Moroccan people and the culture, and I just fell in love with it. Not the food, though. Sorry.
It's fantastic. Fantastic food.
And I will say that that might sound a bit general, but it just proved again to me that everything is possible when you are with the right people. There is no obstacle. I mean, obstacles become fun because you love to resolve problems with the right people. And sometimes things that are much simpler are a nightmare because it's the wrong people that are around you. So yeah, good bunch of people. And actually, I only want to work with them now, which is not making my life very easy, I have to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Christian, Eitan, and Alexandre. And I hope that I will be joining you soon for another session of Series Mania Rendez-Vous. Thank you all, and I wish you all the best for the international sales and international future of No Man's Land. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.